both Nietzsche and Schopenhauer have this idea of a will and drive, and that it's a kind of something that all humans have inside of them, and it's also referred to as kind of like a life force. Also, I think there's a will to power in Nietzsche's work, and I'm interested in how that is related to the alignment, in a way of kind of this spiritual idea of keeping aligned. So,
aligned with what?
Kind of what you're supposed to do in life, like your mission as a person and how that's created and discovered and developed. Because you can feel when you're not aligned a little bit and you're not doing the right thing. So there's Nietzsche says that there's kind of a stage that people get to where he calls it the Übermensch, where you move from society's values to your own values, and this is kind of the first stage of it. So me and you, maybe this was when we were in our late teens, and we realised that the outside external world is a lie. Well, there's values that we don't like, and we develop our own values. And then I feel like you also, somewhere in that space, you develop this kind of higher self, and you start moving towards it, and then that becomes this alignment. I don't actually know how that forms, but there's also maybe a link to, in moving towards it, there's this sort of mental, spiritual idea of manifestation, but you can also kind of refer to it as like, I've started believing in this idea because it's also the same as placebo. That's just what an atheist would call it, or a theist would call it prayer. Like, it's all the same thing of like, this is what I'm going to do tomorrow, and I'm then going to align myself towards moving towards it. And yeah, I'm going to call it manifesting. And then I feel like, okay, this idea of alignment, how does it come about? Why are we aligned to certain things? And I think it comes back to everyone's choice of how they cure their boredom. And if we agree with this Schopenhauer idea that life is an oscillation between boredom and suffering, what you're basically doing is you're moving out of boredom into the suffering in some part. And that's kind of going to choose where you go and why. And I spoke about this before, in that people aren't bored enough, so then they never kind of find this overall direction and drive within them, because they're too much focused on instant gratification, so they're not bored. And so people never feel aligned to a mission or anything. And then there's this kind of Anna Watts idea that also comes into it, in that life is a dance, and that's what we're basically doing with this will, this drive. We're dancing through in our own unique way, and you're aligned because it's harmonious. It's like the distance between the dance is just right for the music, and the closer the music and the dance are together is when you're on truth. So yeah, what's your thoughts?
I think that was quite nice, Jack. I think you articulated that really well. I love that idea that you get to a point where you notice that you don't align with society's values, or the values imprinted on you by, I don't know, your upbringing or your school system or your culture, and you start developing your own values on who you are and what matters. And then all those values culminate to this vision of who you could be if you embodied all of those values. And that becomes your ideal, or your higher self, as you call it. And it's so true. I think I talked about it in a video a couple of months back, where I used the analogy of Mario Kart on the Nintendo DS, when you used to do time trials, right? And there would be this, like, the world #1 ranked Mario Kart player, and you could do a time trial against him, but he was like a ghost character that would always be quicker than you in the race, right? And you're playing your POV, you're your player, and you see this perfect time trial of this ghost-like character doing the race doing the corners perfectly, and using this kind of, when you can what's the word, you can sort of grind. I think it's like a handbrake grind round corners to get an extra bit of power, or whatever it is. You're watching that happen ahead of you. Well, that's you in your life. When you develop this kind of vision, this higher self, this higher being, this higher version of you that you'd like to live up to, you always see it kind of just ahead of you in the race in your life. You don't quite meet up to it because you are imperfect, and you will fall off the straight and narrow path from time to time. But you have a vision that you'd like to live up to. I really like that. And then our will, our psychic energy, as Jung calls it, our libido, is the force that compels us to try and be that guy, to try and be that that fully integrated, valuable individual. And it's, really nice. Really nice. And I had one extra thought now that's just flown out of my head. What was the last thing you said? You talked about the oscillation between suffering and boredom.
The dance of Alan Watts. And
the dance, yes. And this is it. I want to just expand on that analogy. Really, really nice. The music, let's say you're listening to a beautiful piece of classical music, and we're seeing that as the ideal self, because that music is transcendent, it's mystical, it's awe-inspiring, it's sublime, right? And what we're doing is we're just trying to dance along to the music. We're trying to move along in the right manner, move our bodies and be one with the vibration, the frequency of the tune. And that's what we're doing in our lives. We have this higher self that represents the music, and we have us that represents the dancer, and we just want to align with that. We want to dance along to the tune of life, and we want the music and the soundtrack of our life to be the most beautiful, most transcendent, most sublime piece of art it can possibly be. And that's how you live the optimal human experience. And it sounds really wishy-washy and metaphorical, but I get it. I feel it.
In the same way that you don't know when the music ends, or you don't know what the next note's going to be, no one knows what they're doing. So we're absolutely relying on this will to guide us. There's the only people that differ is kind of maybe more religious perspective, in that they're given values rather than kind of discovering your own, and then that's a different kind of journey. But in this notion of existentialism, it's about the discovery of the meaning at the end of it. And
what I love about Alan Watts' idea about the dance is that it's so true. When you're dancing, you can't be thinking about the move you're going to make in 5 seconds' time. You are completely in the present moment. It's almost like your body's possessed by the music, and you're using your intuition and your heart and your life force to guide you. So it's not only an analogy that links into this sort of higher self ideal notion, but it also points to the present moment as the anchor point of doing that. That if you focus on the present moment, you dance along to the current beats of the song, then the whole performance takes care of itself.